The city of Lagos
there is still a poor level of
Be the first to know from the north, south, east, west, and around Africa. We break the news.
One Nigeria.
Now you can catch all the actions live as the news breaks. We are Core TV News.
Welcome to Core TV,
24-hour news station.
It's Core Digest, the Thursday edition on Core TV News, and we can't be discussing any other thing aside what happened yesterday, talking about the double explosion that rocked Kaduna metropolis yesterday. And our topic is Kaduna 2-in-1-day blasts. And our guest this morning is Bala Zaka. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, viewers.
It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Of course, we've been having incessant attacks rocking our nation, especially in the northern part of the country. What happened yesterday was a big one. Talking about the targets, a cleric and an ex-head of state in this nation. One question that comes to mind is, where are we heading as a country?
Well, the answer, some of the answers are not far-fetched. You know, it's the solutions that we really need to work around in national interest to find solutions to. You see, Nigeria is not secure today. When there is insecurity in a country, that country is thrown into a risk. What is a risk? A risk is the chances of threat, which in this case will be insurgents, terrorists, or militants, taking advantage of your vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities could be very weak funding, lack of education, lack of employment, propaganda, poverty. These will be vulnerabilities. When threats take advantage of your vulnerabilities, they cause you harm. And when they cause you harm, the harm could be religious harm, there could be social harm, there could be political harm, there could be economic harm. And if you look at it in the context of Nigeria, what we are experiencing from insecurity now are basically all the harms we've described. But before you got to that level, there must have been certain things that also led you to that point. Because when you are secured, then that means all your control measures and safeguards are in place. But if you're not secured as we are experiencing now, then it simply makes you understand that probably your preventive control measures are not adequate or they have failed. Your corrective control measures are not adequate or they have failed. Or your detective control measures. Because when you talk about preventive control measures, you simply means it should have been prevented. Okay, let's assume you couldn't prevent the attacker from getting to the point where they were getting to. Then your detective mechanism, because we could have systems where, like security doors or whatever, or in banks, I may not be able to prevent you from coming in, but I should be able to detect you when you come in. So if my preventive mechanisms fail and my detective mechanisms fail, the chances are that you will do what? You, the attacker, in this case, the threat, or the insurgents or the terrorists will succeed in hitting me and causing me a harm. So I think to some reasonable extent, some of our control measures have probably failed. They have probably either been compromised, but something has happened with their functionality at the time of the incidents. And that was why we experienced the harm or the attack of yesterday.
How did we get to this point in this nation? Because you look at situations going on, you seem not, the more you look, the less you see. It seems the case is becoming. How did we get here?
You see, anytime you ask about how we got to the situation we got to, I think it's a very sad question that strikes the mind to the point where everybody, if you're not strong enough, you could actually shed tears. And the reason why we are saying this is because, I mean, Nigeria is supposed to be a great country.
Exactly.
Right, in terms of our population, in terms of our demography, even in terms of our geographical natural situation. Because we are situated along the coast, we are probably the biggest the country that has the biggest reserve or endowment of a powerful energy called hydrocarbon. And if you go outside the shores of this country, Nigerians are across the world. Great people, great achievers. But internally, somehow, somewhere, the mathematics is not correct. So if you ask how we got to this situation, it's a very sad and a touchy question, because we have allowed something called insecurity or insurgency to be able to permeate the strata of Africa, of Nigeria in particular. But one thing you need to also understand is this. You see, terrorists, right, or insurgents, but terrorists in particular, they are not disgruntled elements. A disgruntled person is someone that has something to settle with you, right? He says, come to the table, let's settle. So that means you can negotiate with a disgruntled element. But terrorists, in the case of Nigeria, are disloyal elements. A disloyal person has no respect for constituted authority. A disloyal person does not recognize your existence. A disloyal person feels you shouldn't be there. Not that he wants to negotiate. A disloyal person wants to get rid of you. And you see, when you talk about what we're experiencing in Nigeria, right, we are experiencing real homegrown terrorism, right? And terrorists have a vision and a mission. The vision of terrorists, one, is to render a country lawless. Once they render a country lawless, then the intention is to render a government powerless and irrelevant. Look at it across the whole world. Whether it's political terrorism, narco-terrorism, social terrorism. The plan is first, render the country lawless. When you render a country, no forms of governance or legal system that works, then you make the government powerless. That is, weaken the bones of the government, then make it irrelevant. And after that, you will foster your ideology. And unfortunately, the negative thing about terrorists is they have a mission. And the mission now is they will apply all kinds of forces, right, to bulldoze obstacles on their way. In other words, they are ready to kill. They are ready to bomb. They are ready to destabilize, as you saw yesterday.
Talking severally at several events, the president has repeated that Nigeria is not a country that deserves what is happening to it right now. And when you look at other nations of the world where nuclear weapons are rife, where they carry out tests, and even Committee of Nations are saying you should not do this and do that, talking about ban on nuclear weapons. Now the question is, Nigeria never planned for such a situation.
No.
But it came upon us, and we're having a difficult time combating this and conquering, actually. Are we saying we should be thinking of more terrible things to come in the future so that we can be prepared to meet up with it?
No,
just like other nations of the world are doing.
When you talk about generational planning, you know, some countries plan like 50, 100 years ahead of them. When we heard about the Nostradamuses of this world, it all had to do with you thinking and planning futuristically. You come up with conditional clauses, conditional situations, simulate them. In the event that this happens, what do we do? And that's why when you see researchers coming up with things out of abstraction, it's good. Sometimes you just do this thing and you keep them in the event, and that's what planning is all about. But you see, what is happening in Nigeria, the shameful and the unfortunate thing about the Nigerian situation is that it is even self-inflicted. You know, people suffer from calamities, but most of these calamities are either external or natural. But the one in Nigeria is man-made, right? They are self-inflicted. In the case we're experiencing now is, we are experiencing a case where fellow Nigerians, right, because of their disloyalty to their country, decided to take their time, recruit vulnerables, right, indoctrinated them, right, radicalized them, and now are using the weapon of propaganda to destroy their own country. And it happened within a very short time frame, and that is why we're still happy to a reasonable extent that Nigeria is still holding itself together. But what is happening to Nigeria is very painful. It is not what we expected, looking at the dreams of the founding fathers. But we're also happy that within this time, we just need to rally around our government in national interest to fight that monster called terrorism.
But of course, according to you, this whole issue is self-inflicted.
Correct.
But
homebreed.
Severally, we've heard that these people could have foreign assistance, could have links with other terrorist cells outside the nation. Are we now talking of a situation where Nigeria begins to build nuclear weapon in case it gets to that?
You don't need it. You don't need nuclear
so that we don't get to a point where we say we don't deserve this and it's happening to us.
What you need to just do is, you see, when you talk about the local terrorism, that is why it is difficult to control. You know, local terrorism or homegrown terrorism means the people are within you. You know, they are fellow Nigerians. What they are doing is they are guerrilla in their approach. They use guerrilla attack. In other words, I will be part of you. But it is when I strike you that you know I've never been with you. They are metamorphic in their approach. In other words, they wear the same dress like me and you. They are chameleonic and they are amoebic. In other words, once you strike, they can permeate into the larger society and you can't see them. But you cannot cut them away from international support or international data gathering. And this is where we need to have the demarcation. You know, when you say these people are effective and are getting funding, there are some things you just need to do. If you can cut off the line of communication, right? And you can cut off the funding, right? And you can cut off how they get their intelligence, you will cripple them. So the communication you can always get. And that's what they are probably having. The funding, somehow, somewhere, you can always get. But the funding they are getting are actually from the enemies of Nigeria. Who the enemies of Nigeria are, I don't know. The security intelligence people may be able to explain that. But we all know that those who are perpetrating this are basically fellow Nigerians. And you can only, let me just give you a practical example, because we are talking about realities now. If for any reason now, somebody wants me to go into a place like, say, Gambia or Guinea, and stay in the forest of Guinea and start coming out and be killing Guineans, how possible will it be? First of all, I know I'm not a Gambian. I'm not a Guinean. How can I understand the terrain if you just drop me in the bush? It simply means I need a fellow national of that country, a traitor, a betrayer, a talebearer, somebody that has no value for his own country, right? To pick me out of Nigeria, take me into the forest of that country, and show me the routes, the necessary trajectories, and if possible, the necessary radar I need to destroy his own people. It's as simple as that. You don't need nuclear weapons. When something is within you, when something is within your legally geographical entity, all these things are happening probably within a place called Sambisa Forest, and those flanks of Nigeria, geographically, legally, those are within Nigerian legal territory. Did you get what we're saying? When you go to other countries, places like Yankari Games Reserve, the Sambisa Forest, they are supposed to be another dimension of tourism and attraction. Like when you go to the Kruger Forest, you go to Kenya, you go to other countries, you go to all those reserves, they are supposed to be another source of revenue generator. But in the case of Nigeria, places like Sambisa, the Cameroon Mountains, right? Places like going to the Yankari Reserve, have gradually, probably over time, been taken over by criminals. I remember in my university days or secondary school days, there was a governor then that discovered some people in a mountain in this same area, Goza area, then Colonel Madaki, when he was the governor of Gongola State. And those people were then called the Koma people in the mountains. Ordinarily, those are places that Nigerians should go and see wonders of nature, right? That in the 21st century, you could see people not wearing clothes. And those were all the areas that should have been generating revenue for tourism, but have been allowed to be taken over by rascals.
Before, we used to think these insurgents were after schools, against education. They used to attack schools, churches. But what we're saying now, the attack of Islamic clerics, especially those who are against them, who criticize them, and now politicians, we do not understand what the target is anymore. How do we handle this as a nation?
Do you remember when we started this discussion, we said division.
Division, yeah.
If division is to render a country lawless and a government irrelevant, the mission will be to take the necessary steps and bulldoze all human and material obstacles on your way.
So maybe the name Boko Haram is not even appropriate again?
No. What I'm saying, the human obstacle could be a cleric, it could be a pastor, it could be school children, it could be Chibok girls. You don't want obstacles because they apply what we call brute force. That's what we're saying. So if your intention is to use brute force to destabilize a country and make a government irrelevant and a country lawless, anybody can be your target. As long as that person is in the line of fire, you are ready to deal with him. And that is why when you have insurgents like this trying to destroy all the positive macroeconomic indices of a country, the entire country should unite. There shouldn't be something like a blame game. I belong to this religion, I belong to this tribe, I belong to this particular political party. It's irrelevant. Because when the tsunami of destruction starts coming, what will happen to us will just be like in the word of Martin Muller, right? The German poet and religious leader, when he said, when they came for the communists, we didn't speak out because we are not communists. When they came for the Jews, we didn't speak out because we're not Jews. When they came for the socialists, we didn't speak because we're not socialists. By the time they were done with these people, when they came for me, there was nobody to speak for me. That was exactly what happened during the time of the Nazis. You know, they came, they wiped off these people. You say, oh, no, maybe they're dealing with these people, now them. By the time they are done with that, they will come for another set. Then when they finally are done with everybody, the words, prophecies, and regrets of Martin Muller will befall some of us. And that is why in national interest, not only within the context of Nigeria, not only within the context of Africa, but even in the entire world, if there is a monster that wants to destroy positive dynamisms and ingredients that will make a country grow or a continent or the world great, as in this case, as we are seeing with terrorism, the best thing is to come together in national, continental, or world interests and fight the monster.
The PDP has always insinuated that the APC has a hand in the evolution of Boko Haram because the insurgency is actually rife in APC-controlled states. And the APC as an opposition, they've been criticized for strong statements like Rigas will roast, there will be bloodshed and all of that. Does this attack on Buhari change that perspective?
No. When you see, when you talk about tsunami, tsunami is basically, I don't know, I'm not very good in geography, but when you have ripples of water, then you have stream, then river, then you start getting to a point where you see real turbulence, you know, coming and going to the shore or to the banks. It tells you there is a destruction coming, right? What is happening, to be honest, the politicians in Nigeria are just having fun. What is happening to us is something that required collectivity of ideologies. Because by the time this thing is, if we allow it to continue, it will wipe away everybody. If you look at the origin of Boko Haram, or when it started, before they will say, well, they went to Madala, bombed the church, right? They will look for one or two things that has to do with Christian coloration and try to bomb it. But we got to a point where they wanted to kill the emir of Kano, Ado Bayero. I'm from the northern part of the country. An emir is somebody I'm subject to, regardless of the state. And that simply means when an emir is talking, believe me, I don't have what it takes to look him straight in the face. That is the level of respect you have for emirs. But we are surprised to see the level of moral decadence, right, that made young people in their teens had the courage, indoctrinated fellow Nigerians and radicalized them to have the guts to want to go and kill an emir. They made an attempt because they killed some of his people we call the Dogaris. You know, the Dogaras, that's AIDS in Hausa. Dogara is somebody's AIDS. They killed those people. So he escaped by whiskers. Right? These are people who had what it takes. The emir of Kano is a Muslim, right? You know, even Kano is also another seat of Islam, right? They couldn't succeed. Then they went and wanted to kill the Shehu of Borno. Is the Shehu of Borno not a Muslim? They almost killed him. He escaped, right? And now they went to Goza and killed the emir of Goza. I'm not being sectional here, but what I'm just saying is this. I'm not being sectarian here, but what I'm saying, when terrorists are trying to achieve their objective, they are ready to do away with anybody. Their target may be to do something religious, political, social, but before they will destroy anybody. The emir of Goza, Alhaji Idrisa Timta, is a Muslim. Do you know how they killed that man? They set ambush, and there were 3 emirs they wanted to kill. Those people, those 3 emirs in Borno, the emir of Askira, Alhaji Askirama, the emir of Uba, you know, Alhaji Ali Mamza, whose senior brother incidentally was my classmate because that was where I had my secondary school education. Then the emir of Goza. The 3 of them, they planned this thing and they got them. Do you know how they killed? The others escaped. This man, they bent his head and cut his head with a saw. That was how terrible these people were. And they threw him into the gutter. That was how barbaric it was. Those 3 emirs are all Muslims. But that does not mean they spare any Christian. The thing about terrorists and destructive elements who are disloyal to their country, whether in Nigeria, in Afghanistan, in Yemen, or anywhere in the world, is they will do away with anything and anybody.
But in this situation, we're talking about the PDP and APC, talking about lots of accusations and pointing of fingers with the involvement of an ex-head of state in the situation now.
To me, if you ask me, most of the time people say this, you know, what the involvement of Buhari, to me, is just a coincidence, right? It's just like around the time Jonathan declared not amnesty, he declared the state of emergency across the 3 states. Believe me, it was just a coincidence that those states were then not PDP states. It's just a coincidence. To me, personally, this is subject to discussion. When he did that, it was a coincidence that they were not PDP states. You know, the removal of Inyaku, to me, is just a coincidence. And the removal of Inyaku really reveals how fragile the position of a governor could be. Because before now, some of us were so afraid of political leaders. I've never been a politician. I don't pray to be. I'm not a politician till today. I'm not a carrying card member. But I could not believe that somebody like Nyako, who has been a naval chief, you know, in fact, what that revealed was that a lot of us as Nigerians, you understand, arrogate so much powers to people who are ordinarily should be our servants and servers. Because the ease with which Nyako was removed simply makes me feel any PDP governor, right? Any APC governor, any Labour governor or whatever can be removed. To me, what happened to Buhari, I personally, I feel it's a coincidence. Anybody could have been there at that time, but I don't know. These are things that only people with some level of intelligentsia, you know, will guide and tell us. We just need, these are situations where I will prefer that, or I will suggest that we leave it to the security agencies. Because you never can tell. Because there is what you call accident of coincidence, right? And you also have coincidence of accidents. That's the best way I will describe it. But because of the status of Buhari, right? Because of the status of the other cleric, you know, definitely you are likely to have divisions. You are likely to have dissenting voice. You are likely to have camps of opinion. You can't rule that out. And that's why in this context, I will only say what I feel as a Nigerian. But I will be very happy to see the final Nigerian National Security Agency's report. That is what I would prefer to work with.
Of course, investigations are still going on, but we heard Buhari's report himself saying that it wasn't coincidence. He was a target. According to what we had in the papers this morning, talking about how this person, this particular suicide bomber, had followed him before they got to Kawu Market and he had to slow down and you know all of that. So if we are calling that mere coincidence, someone trailing the convoy of the ex-head of state, do you think that would be proper?
You see, that is why we said when the members of the security agencies or the intelligence team of Nigeria begin to roll out some of the things that are happening, we should be able to correlate them. So, you see, from what you are saying now, I will move from probably to coincidence and start talking about what we best describe as the balancing of probabilities. Then when you move from probabilities, then you come to possibilities. You understand? I started with coincidence, right? Now you got more update, right? I will move from coincidence, okay, this is a probability. You know, the balancing of probability from 0 to 1. By the time it starts graduating from 0, then I will say, when it is at 0, I will say, no, it's not probable that they want to get born. But by the time I see it getting to 0.9, approaching 1, then I will move from probability and I say, it's possible, oh, they were after. You understand? And that's why in situations like this, we should, no matter how rusty our intelligence is, you know, we should rely on them to continue to help us.
But how well can we rely on them and trust what they tell us, considering the explosion that happened in Lagos and security agencies refused to tell us what exactly it was until that recent video came out of Shekau
yes,
claiming responsibility
said, if you
for
lie
the incident. Yes.
If you lie to Nigerians, you won't lie to Allah or to God. You see, whether you like it or not, that's why there is a need for internal cleansing. We should look inwards and live in a civic manner. Because I will not expect somebody to go and import South Africans to replace Nigerians. You won't go and bring Gambians. You won't bring Canadians to come and replace Nigerians. I think it is high time we just understand that whether you like it or not, your country is the best place where you can live. So if we put you in the capacity, I mean, if we engage you in the capacity of security agents, whether as police, whether as SSS, or what's these people, my Oga at the top, Nigerian Civil Defense Corps and the rest, please, in national interest. Because if you rely on sectional interest or sectarian interest, that thing we are still talking about, Martin Muller during the Nazis, will hit you. Because when these people devour others, okay, let's assume it's an inter-party issue now. By the time they finish devouring your opponents, they will begin to, even within yourself as a political party, they will begin to look for other people to destroy. Because that is why people that have negative and diabolic and terrorist tendencies don't probably have sufficient blood to suck. They are blood-sucking vampires. They're never happy. And it happens. We see them. By the time you are done with the people you thought were your enemies, either politically, religiously, socially, or in other army, or economically, you will later discover that you are not okay. You begin to come into your own constituencies. That's what vampires are. And you're talking about economic, political, and social vampires. These are the kind of people. They are monsters. You will never know them because they are across. That was why we said they are chameleonic, they are metamorphic, and they are amoebic. They can be amongst you. They can be within your family. They can be within your political party. They can come from your local government. You never tell. It will only take some change in their internal conscience to behave in a civic and a probably politically disciplined manner.
This person involved in this whole issue, talking about Muhammadu Buhari, has been associated with lots of radical statements in the past. Of course, he has his reasons, and some, he said, have been misquoted. But one of the things he was accused of, not quoting him now, is the fact that Nigerians, the Northerners, should vote for someone who would aid their religion. And the question has been, is it just one religion we have in this whole country? And, you know, there have been so many accusing fingers talking about if this election doesn't go a particular way, then there will be a problem and all of that. Some have said, could this be a deliberate setup to exonerate Buhari of the accusations from the PDP and others who feel this way about him?
To be honest, I don't know. You see, beliefs are beliefs. You understand? Beliefs are beliefs. And when you call them religious beliefs, it's sometimes very difficult to separate people's level of dogmatism or attachment to their beliefs, right? And it's only beliefs that lead to fanaticism. Because most of the time when you really talk about fanaticism, it's only in religion. It's only outside religion. The next one is football, which people say, this is a football fan, and you could see somebody who will sell his house to bet, somebody who will want to die. That one, it's on a minor case. But generally, what I notice is anything that has to do with belief and people's relationship with their divine creator or some forces that they believe keeps them going, I think it's civilization and dynamism of time that will help and probably create a theme of separation on how people will behave. So when you talk about this belief, it's very, very complex. But one thing I know is this: when people get to some levels in life, there are certain things I don't expect them to do. If somebody has grown and has reached the level of all this commissioner, governor, and head of state, I think national interest will help you better, you know? And that's why utterances that people make out of carelessness are sometimes not in their interest. Because there is a saying that out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth what? Speaketh. And there is a saying that the power of life and death lies with the what? The tongue. You can use your tongue to convert a bitter enemy into a friend. And you can use your same tongue to convert a good friend into a bitter enemy. So people should watch their utterances, because these utterances, you just make them out. But the effect may be so detrimental, so catastrophic that even you who made it, you will be surprised. And that is why there is also this saying that the pain, right, the agony and the injuries of bitter words are more venomous than the venom of a viper. What do such statements mean? When you just make utterances and you think they're very simple and generic, the pains and the injuries here will be more venomous than the venom of a viper. And I ask you, what is more venomous than the venom of a viper? It simply means your utterances, even if you didn't really mean them, can destroy your country, right? It can bring about political division. It can bring about national disintegration or balkanization. And that's why people like me, I prefer, to be honest, to advise or suggest that leaders, in this case political leaders and elders, should please guide their utterances. Some may mean it, some may not mean it, but they need to guide their utterances.
Thank you very much, Bala Zaka. It's been Bala Zaka on Core Digest this morning, and we're talking Boko Haram Kaduna 2 in 1 day blast. We'll take a short break to bring you the news on the hour for 10 o'clock, after which we shall continue with this line of thought. Do not go away.
Core TV News now provide a platform for live coverage of political rallies and electioneering campaign from anywhere in Nigeria. Political news stories, political editorial reviews, political discussions, personality profile, People's Parliament from the National, State and Local Government Assembly. Contact us now on 0803-471-8550 or 0803-724-9733. 01453-3407.
A 24-hour news station